Earl Marischal in its second manifestation, fitted with enormous elephant ears for smoke deflectors. The reason for this is that the loco, unlike Cock of the North, its predecessor, was fitted with ordinary Voltjudge valve gear and a double cowl-chap chimney. And the cowl-chap chimney, very efficiently, didn't produce a huge amount of smoke or steam, but that which was produced tended to obscure the driver's vision. The ultimate, of course, in smoke clearance was provided by the A4-shaped Bugatti nose. But here we have Hornby's latest. It's a fantastic model. And before this arrived, what did one have to do? Well, you could start by building an ace kit, as I did here, of Earl Marischal in its first manifestation, as you can see, without the huge smoke deflectors. Now this is an all etch brass kit, and it's been perfectly painted by Ian Rathbone. But is it any better than Hornby's? I very much doubt it. Another way of achieving Earl Marischal was, or is, the approach adopted by Graham King. And this is, well, it started off as originally Hornby's Cock of the North, and he's altered it brilliantly to produce the second in the class. It requires a lot of ingenuity and a lot of resin casting. It isn't necessary now, is it? But it's still a lovely model. We've got here something that I've reviewed before. It makes sense, Hornby having produced the brand new Prince of Wales, to then make Earl Marischal, because the basic body is very, very similar. This one, of course, represents the loco with poppet valve gear, and it wouldn't need the huge elephant ears for smoke deflectors. And I made a video of this and tested it on Gilbert Barnett's wonderful model of Peterborough North. The first job is to fill the reservoir, the water reservoir, with literally water. Now I live in a very hard water area, so I used filtered water, although distilled water would be fine. One must be very, very careful filling up. Anyway, with that job done, now I mentioned that I've used Gilbert Barnett's wonderful railway to test this locomotive, obviously DCC. Now I admit I'm a DCC duffer, so I'll just read a tiny bit of how to get started. Bluetooth mode will work whilst powered through a DCC controller by altering CV12 to a value of 2. Please alter CV's configuration value using the HM/DCC app or your DCC controller. You can control your locomotive with a DCC controller and still connect via Bluetooth to allow for instant read and write CV values in parallel. You have to accept that I'm dim. Anyway, between us, Gilbert Barnett and I managed to get this locomotive steaming beautifully. One is supposed to insert the steaming chimney, but there didn't appear to be one, so we just let it run. We had to refill at one stage because it seems to use the reservoir up quite quickly. And it doesn't steam all the time, but then the real things didn't steam all the time. But the running, I have to say, was absolutely impeccable. Finally, a word of caution. Here I've staged the locomotive on my Little Bidem. Now it can't run on Little Bidem because Little Bidem is DC, and all Hornby's latest DC-fitted locomotives are programmed not to work on DC. But when I say a word of caution, please have a look at the main horizontal boiler handrails. In my clumsiness, I must have picked them up or pinched them on removing the locomotive from its substantial box. Now, it all popped back. It's not as if they've been permanently bent, but please do observe this care. And the train? Hornby's Gresley's, perfectly weathered by Tom Foster. And what a superb presentation the whole thing makes. Hornby's latest steaming 10,000. Now, who would have thought that a few years ago any RTR manufacturer would produce this entirely singular locomotive? It wasn't really a great success. High pressure water tube with a boiler by Yarrow. But what an impressive looking locomotive, perfectly captured, I have to say, by Hornby. Until Hornby's arrived, what would one have to do? Well, you could build the Southeastern Finecast version, which is seen here running on Cliff Parsons' Gresley bead. Lovely model, but no longer necessary. Filling the W1 is different from the P2. P2, you shove the pipette into the smokebox front, but here it goes on top of the boiler. And it's only a very small aperture, so there's an extra thin nozzle on the pipette that's provided in the W1's kit. This too was run on Gilbert Barnett's Peterborough North. Actually got proper headlamps as well. It's an absolutely stunning model. And off we go. Now, for some reason or the other, this one steamed better than the P2, even though it's only got a single chimney. The smoke effect is very, very effective. Sorry, that's tautology. Effective, should we say. And all the sounds, the bells, the whistles, well, no bells, but shovel and whistle and clank, everything, they're all there. It's very sure-footed. One or two other individuals I've seen videos of say it's a bit light-footed, but this one certainly wasn't, and got away from Peterborough North with absolute ease. My thanks to Gilbert Barnett for letting me use his very effective model of Peterborough North. And finally, I set it up on my own Little Bidem, obviously a static shot, but very appropriate. One of Hornby's finest models, along with the P2? Definitely. And thanks to Chris Walsh, once again, for making sense of this footage. It really was a bit jumbled, but that's another story. It isn't now.